this is going to be. We have with us here Toby. Toby is an accomplished debater and adjudicator and a chief adjudicator at several high-class tournaments all across the globe. You can see some of his achievements on the flyer, and he's going to do this for an hour, maybe a little less. Whenever he says we're done, we're done. So, Toby, the floor is yours. This is being recorded. You can always check this out on our YouTube channel, and links would be sent to everyone. Toby? Yep, so you're muted.
All right, yeah, I said hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. A huge thank you to Vacationspars and Super Nana for all they do for debating. Thank you so much for staying on the call. Those persons that are already on the call. I hope this section is going to help us to be better judges as a chair or good wing, but to have like a better tournament experience. Because the end of to the end that we have this particular thing is for development for ourselves as debating. This section I'm going to be using two materials, so credit to the people who made them, the MDU, Manchester Debate Union, and people who put together how to be good and useful judge and wing and trainee. So thank you so much. The section we are going to have today is going to be simple. One, we are going to talk about the principle of judging, and then we are going to talk about the process of judging. So those are just the two things that we are going to be having in the section: the principle of judging itself and the process of judging itself. Give me one. All right. So let's just start with the principle of judging. The first thing we are going to talk about is non-intervention. So in judging, regardless of our position, non-intervention, also known as the average intelligent voter, is just that as an average intelligent voter, we are a judge is just assumed to be informed about global issues, though not in depth, but they are able to accept like common known premises. Like, for instance, an average intelligent judge should know that North Korea is not a democracy. But secondly, is they are not expected to be familiar with very specific information. For instance, the voter turnout in Atlanta in the last election in the United States. They do not have to know all of this, but they are able to follow explanation of complex concepts. So the judge is not just expected to know complex concepts about finance, about sports, if they are just thrown to them by teams, but they should be able to understand them if they explain them. So if analysis are explained and you understand, then that person is an average intelligent voter and on their way to be a very good judge. But second, another thing which is really important in one way to be a very good judge is not to insert oneself in the debate, which is, but not peculiar to one. You do not discredit arguments based on their headlines, maybe, or you discredit or credit arguments based on their headline. Maybe a team is running arguments about backlash or Marxist arguments or free speech. You credit arguments to the extent in which teams developed those arguments. Second, a judge is not supposed to punish him for missing the obvious argument that you would run and do not rebut their cases. And it's something that most judges do in the first place. They put themselves in the debate and assume, oh, if I am in this debate round, this is the most likely argument I would run. And then they expect the team to run those arguments. Your duty as a judge is to look into the debate and fairly adjudicate the debate with only the material that was provided in the debate. That means you do not have to insert, or you don't have preferences for certain premises. Maybe you don't have to be a utilitarian judge or a principal judge, or you say principal argument is better than a pragmatic argument, or a pragmatic argument is better than a principal argument. There are no better arguments. Arguments are better to the degree in which teams explain or prove them in debate. That is the first thing in terms of what makes judges better. The second thing, on in terms of the principle of judging, is debating itself is comparative. So when you're how you comparing each team to another, that is how you judge. So arguments are not just good, but they must be better than others. So in debate as a judge, you imagine each teams in three separate debates. What I mean is, in a debate, you would imagine that CG is debating OG, OG is debating CG, OO is debating CG, and then OO and CG is debating with CO. So you make comparison based on individual arguments within debate. So you're not to assume that if OG beats OO, I'm just going to ask a first drill question, and I want you to put your answers in the chat. If OG beats opening opposition, but CG beats OG, does that mean that CG beats OO? In a debate, opening opposition already beats opening government in the debate. But in that exact same debate, CG then beats out opening government. Does that mean that CG beats opening opposition? I would just want to see charts in the your responses in the charts. Um, sorry, I you can just put those responses in the chat. I'm going to go over the okay, thank you so much. We have Carrie saying no. Okay, Sadu said no. I'll just maybe wait for two or three more responses. I'll explain the scenarios again. In a debate where opening opposition completely beats out OG, where OG completely beats out opening opposition in the debate. So in the opening half, it's clear OG wins the debate, but then CG beats OG in that debate. Does that mean that CG automatically beats opening opposition since OG beats opening opposition? We already have two no's in the chat. Do we have any other person who um have the same different stance? Okay. Sadhu said yes. All right, so let me just answer the question. No. I think they changed their mind last minute. No. Because, like I just explained, teams are to be assessed in a separate manner. So, the OGCG is a separate clash. Yeah, most probably, but not automatically. While CG opening opposition is another debate that you need to assess. So, when you're assessing the debate, you should assess debates independently. Like teams should exist like a separate debate. So you should make CG comparison with OG and CG, OO and CG comparison with CO. So that's separate. Put them in a separate debate in terms of how you assess it. So it's a comparative word. Or it's comparative in its in nature. There are a few mistakes we make when we credit arguments. The first thing is judges are not supposed to credit things like style, structure, or time allocation. They are these three things that I mentioned are useful mechanism for persuasion, and they can strengthen your argument, but you cannot double credit them. So you don't have to credit a team for their style, for their structure, or that they speak within time. Why these are very, very useful mechanisms for persuasion to make you very good persuasive speaker. They can strengthen your arguments. There is a question. I'll just answer that at like before I move to the second structure. Does that work? I'll answer all of the questions in the chat before I move to the second section. The second thing, in terms of mistake people make in crediting, is the number of arguments. The time spent on an argument should not be in and of itself relevant. So a team that spends 6 minutes 30 seconds does not mean they would automatically lose out to a team that spoke for 7 minutes, because an argument can be well proven even in a limited amount of time. Second is, and this is very, very important, because as new judges, or it's important to know this, we are not supposed to overcredit team for trying harder, because we sometimes we might just assume maybe the motion is weighted, or we just felt that the motion is up weighted, and that those arguments that we are making were low hanging fruits, so you credit OG more because they had too much to do. No, it doesn't work that way. And lastly is asserting debates. You do not assert your own metrics within debates. Metric themselves changes depending on what teams have agreed that are the most important metric. It might be metrics that are just motion specific, or the ones that teams have asked themselves that they want to, that the old teams have agreed that they want to assess. That's the most important thing. The second half of these processes of judging is note taking. And I think this is really, really important. So it's either you're a paper judge, which is you flow through paper, or you use digital process. The first thing you must do is you must write clear notes that you are able to navigate. A clear note is the most important thing in judges, in judging. So you need to find a balance between writing too much and too little. You should not be of course, you're not going to be transcribing the entire speech, but also you should not miss out nuances in the debate. There is a skill that I use when I first broke awards in 2022. Now the Belgrade Awards, we have some, and I still do that today anyways. There is a master sheet. So that master sheet is different from your notes. That master sheet contains the bottom lines of teams arguments. They do not necessarily correspond to what those teams, or that like what teams have called out, but they are just bottom line arguments of each team. And these are really, really important, because this master sheet means you're able to condense. So if you've taken a note of a 14 minutes prime opening government, your master sheet just includes just critical cases or critical points, nuances, or arguments on Gov. So you're able to look at that during OA or when you're discussing with others. So it's crucial. This master sheet could still include notes on the way you tend to present during your OA, or the feedbacks that you want to give to teams. So these are really, really important that you must do. So you first is you use your master sheet to pre-structure your OA. So if you have okay, I have a sheet here. So let's assume this is my, I have a note that is different in terms of the notes I've taken in debate. I will divide this note into four, and then I have, this is my master sheet. When I divide it into four, I will then have all, like, just a summary of the notes I've taken from government, opening opposition, closing government, and closing opposition. So this serves as references. So instead of me to go through my notes when I'm taking feedback, and maybe I am paneling a room, and then the judge asks me, why did opening opposition beat opening government? So instead of me to say, so OG ran principle, and give me a minute, let me look through my notes. That does not make you a good panel. You can have a one-time look at your master sheet, and you have an intuition in terms of what they run. So you do that doing, maybe at the end of opening government speech, you quickly write down their master sheet, because in most tournaments runs out of time. So it's difficult for you to prepare a master cheat sheet after the round had probably ended. So that's is really, really important in terms of the principle. Now let's look at the process of debating. But before then, I'll take the question in the chat. What happened if OG beats opening opposition, and then opening opposition beats CG, and CG beats OG? Like I just said, you weigh each of the teams independently within the debate. Like you weigh each of the team independently within the debate to then get that particular result. So let's talk about the practical part of judging, and this is really important. So first, I got to know that there are quite like new judges here, so it means I'm going to break it down, this practical example, really simplistic, and then I'll go up a bit also. So the first thing is that as a judge, you first need to be polite, because tournaments could be very stressful. So we need to treat not just ourselves, but fellow judges with respect. The next thing is, as judges, you only have 15 minutes to arrive at a final call and to allocate speaker score. So it's important that oftentimes the chair will have to reconcile different calls. So your chair should be structured. Why the chair will be structuring the discussion in a way that lets you get information. As a whip, if you're whipping, or as a wing, sorry, the most important thing you need to do is help them out by providing the specific information that they are looking for. That is the duty of a wing. You're helping the chair out with specific information that they are looking for. So if the chair asks you to summarize OG's case, you have to provide the chair with just that summary. You resist the temptation to talk about OG and comparing them to CO or CG, because that is not what the chair wants you to do right now. Second is to focus on the clash that is being discussed. And this is important because most people do not know this when they go into deliberation room. And this is why this is really, really important in the first place. You just notice that you do well in tournaments, you panel some rounds, and at the end you do not break because apparently maybe your chairs have not been providing good feedbacks to you. At the end of this section, I do hope that should change. So you focus. The second thing is focus on the clash that is being discussed. So if you're discussing the legitimacy clash that happens maybe in the back half, don't bring in the economic growth clash. Why? Because the chair has left that out for a discussion for a reason. So think about this from like a selfish perspective. If the chair wants to discuss X and you instead want to talk about Y, even if you're correct in terms of what is important, your chair probably would disagree, and this disagreement will reflect in your feedback. So that is why it is really important for you to stay within the discussion that is at hand. So you could say, Judge or Chair, I agree that OO beats OG on the principle, but I was a bit confused about the significance of this argument. Is there any chance we could talk about that? See, that is a more polite way than to just yap about bringing those the significance of the argument when the chair did not ask after it. Most chair will rather just cut you off in the middle, which then makes the discussion really, really awkward, and then you do not get better um, um, judges' feedback, which is important for you to break. So you stay relevant to the discussion at hand. And I think it's worth stressing again that efficient and productivity discussion focus on individual comparative themselves, like OGOO, CGOG, or COOG. So it is extremely unlikely that there will be a good reason for a panel to be discussing more than the two teams at any given time. So no matter how tempted you are in a debate, to bring CO in a discussion where the chair is asking about OGOO, resist that temptation. If you want to make sure you bring that like that point up, you can make a note and be ready to discuss it when it is time to talk about CO and any other team. So if your judge hasn't specifically specify which comparative they want to discuss, you can start by telling them. If the chair say, why do you rank OG first? But you want to have an holistic talk. You could say, I think OG were successful at explaining both why there's a problem under status quo and how their policy uniquely solved those problems. The team that comes closest to that in this debate, the teams that come closest to that in this debate is CO. So I'll explain why OGs are ahead by comparing them to each other. But if you want me to focus on a different comparative, please let me know. See, that is a concise way. You're telling the judge, this is what OG has done really well, and the team that comes second is closing opposition, and I'll focus on that. If you want me to focus on another comparative, let me know. Swift, simple, and you're not breaking any rules, and that's important. The second is just be concise. Just because you should contribute as a wing doesn't mean you should take up the time. You should take up all of the 15 time to show off, because a speaker needs like 7 minutes to talk through their content. Doesn't mean you need 7 minutes to discuss them also. So, as a judge, you should not be repeating speeches. You should be summarizing and evaluating the context that was provided. So, oftentimes, as judge, we often repeat a speech instead of like distilling the essence of an argument, which leads to extremely long-winded contribution that takes more time. So, what you need to do as a panel is to re-summarize to everyone to just ensure they are on the same page. So, for instance, don't say or do not say. So, let's assume I'm asking you, why do you think OG wins this debate? Don't say opening government's first argument was that the policy will reduce discrimination. First, they said this would happen because give me 1 second, George. Let me read my notes. Oh, they said because of contact theory. So they said that the majority will now interact with the minority. Then they said the media will most likely pick up stories, and they gave example of this story. And then during the DPM speech, let me open my notes to DPM. Okay, so the DPM said that politicians will care about this minority because they want their votes. So they have political capital. Yes, that's what OG discussed. That do not say that. Instead, you could try to say on the discrimination clash, OG compared to status quo and give three mechanisms. First, on contract theory. Second, on media exposure, which I think was mostly asserted. And third, on political capital. Would you like me to elaborate on any of these mechanisms? See, that was short, that was concise, and that was summarized. If I am a chair, I'll most likely give you a very good speaker score because it's short, it's concise, to somebody who just yap their way like a. So the second thing is be precise. Don't be vague. Judging doesn't make you vague. Remember that judging is about like evaluating analysis. The summary of the team's case should just include their claimed impact, the mechanism and the link they are using, and how well those arguments was proven. But if you think that your chair if you think about what your chair is after, it will often be about what make those key aspects of the case weigh against themselves. So try to identify what they do at the same time. Second thing is stand your ground, but not too much. Like if you are convinced of a particular comparative, or team just give specific explanation, or they give specific explanation of why you think one team is coming out of the other, you might just like if you think it is convincing, you could say, cheers, CGK sounds better than OG, but when I look at the specific mechanism they bring, they are the same as OG. For instance, their contact theory, media exposure, and political capital are all materials I've gotten from OG. Is there something I am missing out? So this is really, really important in the first place. There are a few questions that might help you frame why you think a team is coming out of the other. The first could be preemption. Like, does the argument offered by the up team not work because of the how OG sets up the debate, or it could even be the plausibility of the case. It could be the contribution to the round. Is the extension they brought in a prerequisite for top half argument? Is it more significant in terms of impact? It could be what was done in the heavy lifting in terms of analysis, or it could even be impact. Like teams sometimes try to weigh different impact against each other. So you must find one team's weighing of impact maybe more persuasive. Okay. I'm going to just drop the questions in the chat. I'll take that question after this. Or what are those tension within themselves? So let's read out this question. A lot of good judges expect highly analyzed comparison to be done, explaining your split between OO and OG with very limited time constraints within 1 minute. Any tip other than providing some red line and asking whether I should explain further or not? For me, I think that's the most unique thing that works. I agree that they want so much heavy lifting in the first place, but the summaries are not just vague summaries. They are summaries that shows that you listen to the round, you have an holistic oversight of the round, you just acknowledge that we do not have so much time. And if you're at World on any major tournament that has 3, 4 persons on the panel, the chair wants every other person to contribute because that's where they give score to them. So the chair understands also. So, for instance, instead of you to then go over like just some read out all of the OG's claim. When you say that on that discrimination clash, OG compared to status quo gave 3 mechanisms. You talked about contact theory, media exposure, media capital. Those are things the chair knows they talked about. When you then say, would you like me to elaborate on any of this chair? It gives them a huge incentive, like a huge knowledge that, oh, this judge knows exactly what the contribution is. So they are then able to follow up in the first place. So that like that tip is the unique tip that I think does work, and it has worked for me in tournaments that I have broken as a judge, and like including wards. I judged the grand finals of PAUDC in my first trial. I broke awards in my first trial. I judged EFL finals of UADC in my first trials, and most tournaments also that I have judged and broken major tournaments. So it works most times. Second is the substance itself, like what to contribute. And this is really, really important. So if you have a full core ready, if you have a full core ready, awesome, you can share it, but don't make any other comments. These are for actually later. And do not start explaining your core until the chair calls for explanation. If you don't have a full core, that's also fine. Like, remember that it's a panel and you only have 15 minutes to come to a call. So tell your judge that you are what you are sure of and flag what you're unsure of. So do not say, so let me assume I call Dev, and I'm like, Dev, so do you have a call? And then Dev says, so I saw that this is a long diagonal, this is long diagonal, and in the end I gave OG the first because their argument about victim wasn't really disputed in the round. Then I thought CG was below both team because they didn't respond to CO, and also the extension was derivative. I put them last because they didn't really understand the debate. I am not really sure. See, you could say something like OG first, CO second, CG third, OO fourth, or say OO first, CO, CG, OO. Although I am not sure about the short diagonal, or something around. I have OG first and OO fourth, but I'm undecided about CO and CG, but I'm leaning CO above CG right now. Or you could say, I think it's an opposition bench. I'm leaning slightly towards CO over OO. I don't have a call about the government's bench yet. Or you could say, I think OG first, but the rest of the bit was really messy. I don't have a full call. That's not bad as a judge. It's better than just running the debate without like having coincide thing. Next is judge the debates that happened. And this is really important. Never insert your biases or preferences within debates. Judge the debates that happen. So even if you disagree with the choices made by the teams, or personally have debated the debates in a different manner, We are sure you already know this because you've read up the rules of BP. But there is no harm in terms of repeating this. For example, you might personally believe that the right to privacy is much less important than safety from terrorism. But a team might just provide solid reasons why, in this case, the right to privacy is more important than safety from terrorism. If the opponent did not effectively show why that's not true and just assert it, then they most likely will place below the privacy defending team. So here, don't say Gulf side never talk about rights in this debate, or it took the whip speaker before I heard anything about rights. You could say it like this: debate came down to one question, namely which side protects the economy from a future recession. Instead of you to fought people. Um, the last form of discussion we are going to have is your contribution itself. Like I mentioned earlier, please take good notes. Like you might develop a shorthand using R instead of rebuttal, or using the delta sign to show change or data, or arrow leading X to Y. Or even using, maybe if you want to talk about feminist movement, you can use abbreviation and use FM. All of these are better way to take notes. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that talks about why you could take very good notes. I think the Korea Words video on YouTube, there is one from Tech Tech Tech1 that talk about intro to good tacking. You can check them out. Bermo talk about I track also. I think Jessica talked about I track also. So you could, they are just 4 minutes, 3 minutes videos on Korea words. So you could check those video out. The last thing we're going to be talking about is don't be passive during the debates. And this is important. If you wait on the debate is over to come up with a call, you will likely panic and you might not have enough time to go through an hour worth notes in 1 to 2 minutes, let alone thinking about it afterwards. I am not saying that you should have a rock solid call halfway through the debate. No, you should, of course, be open to updating your inclinations as the debate goes on, but you should probably have some tentative inclination during the debate and the reasons for those said inclination. So during each speech, you should be evaluating as you go on. So how effective is this reporter that is being made? Does it do anything at all? Does it mitigate arguments? Is this significant? So make a note of the next of it next to the rebuttal. So after every speech, what I do is consider taking a note about who is winning a particular clash on that master sheet. So you could say at the end of the top half. So at the end of the top half in any debate I debate, I always ask myself which team is coming out ahead. Is it OG or O? So I already have that inclination changes as the debate progresses, anyways. Okay, I would answer the questions after this. So it those inclination changes as we go on anyways, but the most important thing is at the end of the top half I already have an inclination of who I think is winning the top half and why they are winning the top half. You could still ask what does back half team had in addition to the top half. You can jot that down in this quick summary of that note. So don't wait till the end of the debate to start evaluating arguments. It's going to be too much of an heavy lifting for you. Just try to transcribe the debate without thinking critically through it also. So what you most likely do is one, make your own annotation and comments to help you participate in the deliberation. Keep a separate sheet of paper like the master or a document that summarizes the main point that just identify the most important thing in the debate. So the first is write a summary, summarize each speeches, um, and then make them better. Let's look at the message on the chat. On the idea of judging things individually, if OG has a claim A and OO completely disapprove it, if CO does not respond, I'm guessing A stands in CO? Yes, it does. If CO does respond, but does not provide a new responses and hence probably isn't credited. So yeah, A is correct. Yes, it's within that comparison. You're judging it individually. So it stands. Second, if CO doesn't respond but does not, if CO does respond or does not provide a new responses and hence probably isn't credited in rebuttal extension, how is this weighed if their response to A is derivative? I think just check in terms of if it's a derivative response, then you can't double credit that since it's a response that has happened within the debate. But if it's an important clash, then what are those important responses that are still going on to the claim? You need to weigh in against themselves. Is there a POI interaction from maybe the opening opposition that is making that particular claim still stand still? So it's open up to the debate. But the most important thing is that how then is this interactions happening within the debate themselves? Um, yes, I think this. I decided to make this short, so I think this is all for the sections. If there are questions, I'll just take your questions now. If there are questions, all right. So one last thing is there are no automatic fourth in debating. So there is no team who is going to come out. No, thank you so much. There is no team who comes out automatically fourth in the debate. So you must assess every team in the debate. If there are no questions, thank you so much for joining the short section. And I hope I get to see you around in tournaments as judges breaking at the top debating competitions in the world. And I hope I see most speakers soon at PAUDC, UADC, or awards. And all the best in our future endeavor. Once again, thank you, Supanana and Vacationspars, for the invitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Toby. Thank you for doing this. It was an insightful session. Hi, everyone. Thanks for showing up. This would be uploaded to our YouTube channel. You can check it out later. We'll share the links with you. And tomorrow we're going to have a workshop on speaking. Hope you attend. Hope to see you there. And good luck with the competition over the weekend. Bye.